It's the off season. That's the perfect time to go through a lap of all of the tracks that we faced in 2022. Be the same set for 2023. We'll start with Willow Springs. This is going to come to you from the view of Denny in a gaggle of cars, and I got to tell you folks, there's some complaints about how rough this place is, and I get it. I wish they would repave it myself, but we have got to go back here because watch the number of passes on this lap. First turn, there's the first one. We've got Eric Poulsen going by Andy Patterson. We've got Andy saying he's going to have none of that, going right back by him in turn two. So in two turns, we've got two passes. Mark Wilson tries to make a go of it there as well. Can't quite do it. That's going to open things up for another couple passes coming up, and watch closely because you're going to see Poulsen go back by Patterson. You're going to see Chuck Horn go by Mark Wilson. So next corner, two more passes. That's four for this lap so far. As we come up to the top, Denny's going to decide he's going to go down the inside. So now we've got the fifth pass happening. But it ain't over yet, folks. We still have a couple more coming on this lap alone. I think if you took a look at this entire race, there's something like nearly 30 passes in this group of cars. So it's just, it's a fantastic track to run. We really have to get back here, and I hope that we can make that happen. Just keep watching on the outside of 8 here. You're going to see Mark Wilson go around, and yes, I totally want to just scream Wilson every time this happens just because I think it would be funny. And up in front there going into 9, you'll see Andy Patterson dive down the inside of Eric Poulsen again. So each of these cars passed at least one other car during this lap, some of them multiple times. Like I said, we really need to get back to this place because it's just that good. Next, we're going to go to Sears Point, my personal favorite track. I absolutely love this place, and you are going to get the view on board from my car. This is fairly early in the race, and I chose this because I'm actually leading, so why not? I'm the one who made the video. I get to lead. It's a fantastic track. The camera doesn't really do it justice here on just what the elevation changes look like. This camera is up above where my head is, so you're actually seeing more than the driver is. So if you get to points in here where you can't see track, just imagine how much sooner that happens for the driver. This is a fantastic place to race. It is my absolute favorite of the tracks in Northern California. Probably my second favorite overall because I really like Willow Springs. But this track has it all. It's got some turns that are blind. It's got turns with elevation changes. It's got Eric moving his hands all over the wheel. For those of you who noticed, by the way, there is a piece of tape on the steering wheel, and yeah, it says Fuel DF, as in Delta Foxtrot. That was because at the grid I kept shutting off the ignition but not shutting off the fuel switch, and when I went to start the car again, I would turn them both on, which means I turned the fuel off, and the car would stall after running for about 30 seconds. So the sign was put on the steering wheel to remind me to turn the fuel on each time. The Delta Foxtrot stands for delightful fellow, I'm pretty sure. I think that's what it meant. Like I said, this is just a really good track. You'll see there's a lot of movement to the car around here. This particular wall during the runoffs, I actually rubbed the logo off of one of the tires on it. Just barely touched it on the way out. So there's really a lot to get after on this track, but very much fun. Next one's Laguna Seca, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to complain. And I'm going to complain about the way we number the corners on tracks, because right here, this very spot is turn 1. It's a 500 foot radius, and you're in it for about 180 feet. For some reason we call it a turn. I don't know why. So this is actually turn 2, which to me is turn 1. It's the Andretti hairpin, which I think is nice that they named a turn after Marco. I mean, I'm assuming it's after Marco because it's a rather slow turn. And then we go on to 3, not a bad corner, not really a lot of fun. There's not too much flow to it. This corner's okay. There's a lot of speed here if you don't have to counter steer. And then we come up to 5, which 5 is quite a bit of fun. There's a good amount of banking here, but it is a little bit slow, especially when you're being passed. As you come up the hill now, you will get to a kink up here that is done very quickly. Very high consequences for getting it wrong. You don't want to put a wheel off here because you tend to shoot across the track. That's what all those skid marks are there for. Then we come up the Rahal Straight, and I got to tell you, if I'm a professional race car driver who makes a living road racing, if you name a straightaway after me, I'm going to be insulted. Then we come to my favorite set of turns for numbering, that's the corkscrew, and you've got a left and a right. You would think turns 8 and 9. No, 8A and 8B, because I don't know. I mean, NASCAR has 2 turns that go in the same direction, and instead of calling it 1 turn, they call it 2 turns. We have 2 turns that go in opposite directions, and we can't call them something different. But in any event, it just kind of drives me nuts how we name corners and what numbers we give them and how many turns are on a racetrack that by and large don't actually exist. But I guess it sounds impressive, so there's that. Off we go to Thunder Hill. This is actually my second favorite track in Northern California. I like it better than Laguna Seca. I know all of you Laguna fans are going to absolutely hate me for saying that, but I've got to tell you, from a driver perspective, Thunder Hill's a better track. It's a lot more flowing, it's a lot more fun to drive, and in my opinion, it's a lot more challenging. This is the shorter version of the, well, 3 tracks that we ran that particular weekend. Formula F, the series, only scores 2 races, and the 2 that I've selected here are the 2 that we run. This is the shorter version. I think they also use it for driver school events. So you'll see this first section again, which is why I'm kind of rambling, because we'll get back to it. Right here, you're going to come to a braking zone that is not what you're normally using, and it's pretty difficult because it's hard to pick out the exact spot that you need to hit the brakes to be able to get into this infield section that comes up right here. And then this corner, man, it's slick. It was slick the entire time we were there, and it's hard to find a line through it. And you'll see this section again too, that's on the longer track. This particular camera car was Kenan Marshall, who ran a really good race there this year. So you'll see him move over to Dave Jalen, and Dave is following me around the track here. This is the 3-mile loop that we run. Turn 1 is fast. Turn 1 is really, really fast. On a really good weekend, it's just barely a lift, and on a not so good weekend, there's a brush of the brakes. Then down a gear and into this corner, a big 180-degree turn with a lot of balancing on the throttle and on the steering. Up over a brow, which makes this really difficult. It unsettles the car pretty badly if you don't do things in exactly the right spot. And then people talk about the corkscrew. This, frankly, is more difficult than the corkscrew because you come up to the top and you can't see over it. The corkscrew at Laguna, you could see that once you get past the little right-hander to the left-hander, you can pretty much see everything. This one's a lot more blind, more difficult to get to. Then we come up to probably my favorite section of this track, because there is a flat-out in 4th gear kink to the left, and it's every time I've been there, it takes me a number of laps before I get comfortable knowing that, yeah, you can go through there flat. Then this corner, which is a left-right combo, and you really have to treat it like it's a left-hander, with the course then correcting to the right after. If you don't drive that section that way, you quite simply won't be fast. That's just how that section works. You've then got a fast left-hander followed by a slow left-hander. And I still think it's kind of cute that they painted all these lines to make it look like the track turns here, and it really doesn't. I don't know very many people who actually turn through there as opposed to just go straight through the very rough pavement. We then come down to the final corner here, which is a double apex right that we're going to get through, and that first part is slow, and then you are flat through here. You've got to make sure you get through this last corner with full speed, because otherwise you're going to get passed coming down the start-finish straight. So that's the 2 different configurations at Thunder Hill. Again, a lot of fun to drive. And that takes us on to Buttonwillow, which there's a number of different configurations of Buttonwillow. I won't give you all of them because there's a lot of similarity between them. Camera car here is our series champion, Stuart Patterson, and this is headed down into Sunrise. It's a pretty quick corner. It's quite a bit of fun. I have to say, unfortunately, we then come up where we have this slight kink to the left followed by a hard right-hand turn, which kind of eliminates it as being a passing zone. This off-ramp alternate section is kind of interesting, but again, there's not really a lot of opportunity to pass. You can get a pass made here, but only if the person in front of you really messed something up, and then through this stretch, it's you got to kind of stay line astern. These 2 corners are critical to making sure that you get speed onto the next possible passing point, and that is this long straightaway with the dogleg that runs into Riverside or Daytona or Sybil or whatever it is that you want to call it. I've heard it called by a number of different names before. The problem is it's hard to get this pass done because, as you saw and heard, there's not much of a lift there. It's pretty fast through that. And then you follow that up immediately by coming up an overfill hill, which is a heck of a lot of fun. It's a great turn, but again, not much of a passing zone. But it does set you up then for one of basically 3 passing zones on this track, which is going into Star Mazda. This is a pretty tight corner down at the end here with a big braking zone to try to get past people. After this, you'll end up in some S's, which you can see Stuart has a philosophy of keeping the car strictly on the gray stuff. I bound over all the curbs because I'm not the one who does the setup on the car. Stuart is, so he can deal with it. But he chooses to keep the car a little more tidy through there than I do. And that leads you down to Sunset, which is the final passing zone here, and fitting to have Sunset be the final corner that we're going to show you in our 2022 year in review. Thank you to everyone who came out, and we will see you all in 2023.